I'm Sara Stromeyer. I'm a faculty member in the psychology department. I'm also the associate director of clinical training for our clinical psych PhD program. So I work a lot with the graduate students, but I have the pleasure of teaching one undergraduate class this semester. And this class in particular, I'm very passionate about. I actually started teaching this class as an adjunct. I developed it as an adjunct. And then I think this semester is the fourth semester that I'm teaching it. So every semester I improve it a little bit more. So I'll be talking about child mental health theory and field experience. So let me just tell y'all a little bit about the class. This is a small discussion-based, experiential learning-based course for advanced psychology majors. Sometimes I have non-psychology majors, in related fields with a psychology minor. It's 15 students, and they have to apply to be in the class. So I have the great fortune of selecting who is in my class. I realize that's not usually a possibility. But they're advanced students who are planning to pursue a career in child mental health, broadly defined. So I'll talk about how we kind of address that. And I see my course as kind of having a three-pronged approach throughout the semester. So when we meet in person, I give some lecture. Mostly what we do is discussion. A little bit heavier on the lecturing at the beginning of the semester. They have to do an ethics component and take a quiz on it before they can actually be out at the facility. So that's some kind of a requirement that we have to do. But these are some of the topics that we address throughout the course in our lecture and discussion, and they have graduate level readings in these courses that we talk about. And as much as possible, we try to relate it constantly back to what they're seeing or what they're thinking about or what type of career they're going to pursue. So I try to make everything very relevant. I also have guest lecturers throughout the semester. I have about 8 to 10 every semester lined up, and that's something I'm working on right now. I think I have them all lined up and scheduled. So they come and talk for a portion of my class. And Heather's come to it twice so far this semester. I have a 2.5-hour block. So it's nice for them to hear from other people besides me, because nobody wants to hear me talk for 2.5 hours. So I have guest lecturers come. They are from all different disciplines. They're from the community. I try as much as possible not to get other faculty members at the university. But I might have some people from UMC come. I have somebody from the RISE Center coming. And then I have applied behavior analysis specialists from the community or social workers. Different people from different careers come to talk about different topics. I have graduate students come to talk about graduate school. And then they talk about their areas of expertise, their current job, their graduate training that was required. And that's a lot of what the students are interested in hearing about. What types of training do I need to get to where I want to be? And oftentimes, I find that after the semester's over, they have decided to pursue different graduate training that they had originally thought about, because most of what they know about is what I do, clinical psychology. So that's part of why I try to get a diversity of perspectives in the course. And then the main experiential learning component of the course is shadowing and mentoring at Brewer Porch Children's Center. So some of you might already know about Brewer Porch, but it's out behind the VA in Tuscaloosa. It has 7 residential and intensive outpatient treatment programs for kids, range of ages, and with a range of emotional and behavioral problems. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Brewer Porch. Got some pictures from their website. This is the front entrance, and this is what a room might look like for kids who live there, the gym, one of the classrooms. So many kids live there. Not all of them do. Some go just for day treatment. It's like an alternative school program. But some of them live there and go to school there. Some of them live there and go to school in the community here. So there's all sorts of different programs that they get to see. We have the students, they go out once a week for 2-hour blocks. Scheduling is always a challenge, but they go in these kind of scheduled blocks. And they'll stick with that block throughout the semester, and then as time goes on, they'll identify which group of children they want to stick with. And usually there's a kind of divergent perspectives on which students want to go with different child clients. So that's fun. They kind of get to really know those kids throughout the semester and work with them, get more of a mentoring relationship goes on. But we allow them some choice in that. A new thing that we're doing, and I'm saying we because I work closely with the director of Brewer Porch, and he helps me a lot figure out what would work best out there. This semester, for the first time, we did something different where this first month of January, they are getting to go to different times outside of their normal assigned time slot to see things that they wouldn't otherwise get to see, like a treatment team meeting with the psychiatrist and the psychiatric nurses and the occupational therapists, physical therapists, and see what a treatment team meeting looks like or what a group therapy session looks like. So they're getting to see some of these other things, and it's really been useful so far, I think, in their broadening their perspectives. So these are my student learning outcomes, and I may have to tweak them slightly when I'm making my matrix a little bit later on. But of course, this is what we're talking a lot about right now, is they need to be able to apply ethical standards in the field to when they're actually out there working with children. I realize that they're not doing clinical work, they're not doing research, but they do there are situations that fall under ethical dilemmas, which when we talked about it, a lot, it's really a type of problem solving when you encounter an ethical dilemma, and they will encounter some. So figuring out how to work through that and thinking about what the field might say, and there's a lot of gray area, especially when you're working with kids. Synthesizing literature on mentoring relationships and applying that to their practicum experience. So that was actually our topic this past week, was what does the literature say on mentoring relationships, what works, what doesn't, how do you end it well? We're already thinking about ending, we're at the beginning because it's important to set the kids up for a good ending, knowing that it's a planned ending. We're talking about how to field questions from kids, things like that. How to evaluating careers in child mental health settings. A lot of that comes with our guest lectures and thinking through different types of trainings and when talking about different responsibilities. The other nice thing about being at Brewer Porch is that they get to see people from a lot of different fields at different levels of training, and they have the opportunity, and they take it to kind of informally interview these people, ask them what their day-to-day responsibilities are like, what they don't like. So they kind of get to see, what does it look like in a real-world context. Classifying common childhood mental health issues. We kind of go through the DSM and talk about common disorders and recognizing evidence-based practices in treatment of common childhood disorders. So we talk a lot about treatment, what it looks like throughout the semester. So these are kind of the three things I think help the most with problem solving. I think I've talked about problem solving a little bit already. So mentoring is a very interesting relationship, and it's kind of a short-term mentoring relationship in this context of a semester, especially since they won't identify which kids they're going to stick with for a little bit longer. But they will be helping child clients with their own problem solving, and I think that helps the students to think through what is a problem solving approach. So there's different models of problem solving that we've started talking about and how they're going to help child clients with that. They need to be, pretty well set up to think through how to solve problems. How to balance problem solving or advice giving with empathy and support, and how to be an active listener, not so much of a talker. That's something that the students have been bringing up a lot in our discussion recently. They will be exposed to challenging or ethical situations. Hopefully not anything very egregious, but they will they'll witness some inappropriate staff behavior. Now, like I said, I'm not talking about anything really egregious, but when a staff member is maybe not using best practices to interact with a child because of their own frustration, our students see that, and they will talk to me about it or reflect on it and think about, where is the gray area here? Is this something I need to talk to a supervisor about? How should I address this if I'm the one here and I'm not there? And then, of course, children are very curious, and they like to ask personal questions, and they're very excited to talk to our college students who are out there spending time with them. So a lot of times, our students will get very personal questions from the children who are really just curious. So we've talked about, where do you draw that line? Sometimes it's here, but sometimes it's here. It might depend on the kid. So some examples might be, where are you from? That may or may not be innocuous depending on the kid. Talking about things like, oh, everybody in my family goes to college, that kind of might be kind of a harmful statement to these kids who don't know anybody who's been to college or who've been, abused, and now they're in the foster care system. So thinking about something that might seem innocuous to you, how you might respond to a child about this. Another big one that comes up is questions about romantic relationships. So if the student's going out there, have a boyfriend or girlfriend, what do you do with your boyfriend, girlfriend? That can start going to the line of inappropriate. So how do you respond in an empathetic way to not, to maintain the relationship? That's another problem that our students kind of have to solve in a real-time basis. And then finally, they will get to practice some group behavior management. So they're never left in charge of these kids one-on-one. There are always staff members nearby. That, of course, will be a liability issue. But they will have a student-led activity at the end of the semester with a group of children that they're working with. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And that will have a lot of opportunities for problem solving in the moment. Okay, so these are kind of the main assessments of student learning. Although I will say this second one, this group activity, isn't graded, but I will be assessing them on it and giving them feedback, and they'll essentially be assessing themselves and reflecting on it. So they do weekly reflections on their experience, and I love any of our discussion about reflections because I'm constantly thinking about how to make them better. I get a variety. I feel like overall they're pretty good, but I'm always trying to improve. So something that I've done new this year is went and combed back through all the reflections from last year and found really good ones and put them up. And I'm hopeful that's going to be useful for them. But I really, really want them to not just give me, today we went to the treatment team and the doctor talked about this, and then this kid said this, and it doesn't really matter to me. And now, of course, they know that they can't use any names or anything like that. But I want them to synthesize what they see with things that we've read about in class, things that we've talked about in discussion. And so from the get-go, I'm requiring to do that, which was challenging for the first one since we hadn't had any readings or discussion yet. And what they did on their own without me suggesting it was related to things they had learned in previous courses. So they're integrating their experience. I mentioned the group activity. So we've done this the past 2 years where students have led a group of children in activity. It might have been like teaching them dance moves or teaching them a new card game or leading a science experiment with them or like an art project for some of the younger kids. So it's really fun and rewarding for both the kids and the students. This year, we decided to give them a second opportunity to do it. So usually the issue isn't the actual activity that they're trying to do, because that's what the students practice. They practice how to do it. The challenge comes is that all the kids that they're dealing with have significant emotional behavioral difficulties. They might get really upset when they have to wait their turn, or they're just so out of control, moving all around, they're not focusing. So the students will learn from that during their first opportunity, reflect on it, talk with each other, come up with some ideas about what to change, and then do it again a couple weeks later. So I'm excited about that. It's the first time we're trying it. And I think that'll be a good opportunity for problem solving. Okay, so these are some ongoing challenge. Reflections are always the challenge. So I mentioned some of the things I'm trying to do. I'm also thinking about, based on what Jay Roberts suggested, giving them some specific reflection prompts. So not for every single week, but giving them a kind of menu of, one time I want you to interview a staff member. Many of them have already done that informally in the past, but to make it more consistent, I'll ask that everybody do it now. So that we can have, try to make everybody, making sure they're kind of thinking through the range of reflection options, essentially. And then ensuring similar experiences is kind of my all the time challenge. For the most part, they always get to see some questionable staff behavior or restraints or seclusions. Kids, so those are, kind of emotionally provoking situations that they have to think about and deal with, and that they would experience in a career. The rotation schedules are always tricky because I have to get groups, going out there, roughly a few groups going out at the same time, and so depending on the time they go, they might not have the opportunity to see something, but that's why hopefully this new rotation at the beginning of the semester will help out. But those are some things I'm always thinking about. And